What's going on, everybody? Sorry it's been a little bit since I posted a video. I know you guys have been wanting to see the progress of this truck, but I caught the COVID and I'm finally better. So the first thing we're going to do today, now that we have this door off the truck and everything's apart, we're going to replace this lower. But we're not going to put this whole thing in. That's just ridiculous. We're only going to put in what we need. Here's what we got going on down here with the inner box. So the first thing you want to do is you want to find all your good metal, and then that's we're gonna weld the new one in right there, and then we're gonna save the door skin too, where it wraps around. They make an outer door skin, but this is one of the newer body style trucks, and it has a little line on the other side. You can't really see it here, but there's a big line that goes across the whole thing, and I don't really want to disturb that. I want to keep that original line in there. So we're going to make a new lower door skin when this is all done. So the first thing to do, start cutting. Okay, so now that you have all this cut out of here, you have to remove that lower door skin from the outside, because if you don't, that rust just goes right behind there, and there's nothing you can do about that. So you just have to get it all out of there. Luckily, we got this all cut apart, and there's very minimal surface rust here that we have to remove before we start fitting the new pieces. And you want to use one of these flap discs right here. They work really good. Get those at Harbor Freight. Alright, so everything's all cleaned up. All the metal from the inside looks great. Now we're going to take the piece that we cut out and trace it on top of this one, but we're going to make it just a little bit bigger. This is how I like to do them. You take your new inner and you line it up to where it lines up to the outside here. And then, being that you have it laid on top, your old piece lines up right here. Everything's lined up. Now you want to cut your new piece just a little bit bigger than the old piece. So now that you have everything cut out, you want to get some good rust protectant in there before you put this all back together. And I unrolled the outer door skin on both sides here, because the new piece is going to go on top. And then I also sprayed a nice coating in there on this piece before I put it on. So pretty much this is going to go right on top like that, and we're going to weld this in. So now that all your rust coatings have dried really well, you put this piece right on top, and then you start throwing some tack welds on there. The trick here is just making sure that the metal is touching each other, no gaps in between. And then you space them apart, just a couple inches apart, and then what you want to do is you do your next weld here, and then you do your next weld here. And you do them right next to each other the whole time, and you go down the whole thing, and then you start back over, and then you do another weld next to the one you just did, and you keep doing that until you get to the other end. And the reason why you do that is to keep the temperature down, because you can see how this right here, this metal isn't warped, it's still nice and straight yet. So by spacing your welds apart and not doing one continuous line, you're not going to get any major panel warpage. You're going to get a little, but not a lot. And putting it on top, putting the metal on top of the old metal, helps with warpage also. So you can see in here how the new box lined up with the old box in there. That's why we pulled the skin back. So then once this is all welded up, we're going to grind the welds, and then we're going to fabricate a piece for the outside, and we're going to wrap it around. And nobody's ever going to even know we were in there. So eventually they're going to start all connecting together. Alright, so now that all your welds are connected together, you're going to take your grinder, you're going to go across the top of that, and you're going to try not to remove a whole lot of metal, because you don't want to make it real thin where you welded it. So just take off what you need, and then we'll use a little body filler, and that's going to disappear. So now that everything is completely grinded, you just throw a little body filler on there. If you use any more than this, you're just wasting your time, because you have to sand off more than you need. So just try to keep it minimal. And I like to use a DA sander to get that off of there. Blocking stuff out is sometimes overrated, especially if it's somewhere that you're never going to see. And over the years I learned to get things really straight with the DA. Alright, I buzzed off that first coat of Bondo with the DA, and it turns out that that's going to be just fine. That came out really nice. And like I said, you don't want a whole lot of filler on there. The less filler the better. And when this is done, you'll still see that factory spot weld. Everything will look just nice and original. And that new piece didn't come with this vent on it. So if we would have put that whole thing on, that would have disappeared. On this vehicle, it really doesn't matter. But some of these trucks, the door panel stopped all the way up here. And you saw this. So you just got to put in what you need. And that's the way you get it to look the nicest. Okay, so this is for the outside. I have a 36-inch long piece of steel here. And I put a little bend on it. And then this is the top here. This is going to be the face of the door. And that's all we're putting on. Okay, so we got the door flipped over and I got that piece cut out. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that piece under the original door skin, because we're trying to save this body line right here. This body line goes across the whole door. So with this being under there, when we weld it, it'll make it easier for the body filler to cover everything up, and it'll just make it look really nice. And then once it's welded, then we're going to take our hammer and dolly and we're just going to bend this around, and hopefully this right here lines up with our original skin perfectly. Show you what it looks like before. That's our new box in there. Before we put this on though, we're going to take some good rust proofing and we're going to rust proof the inside of this really good before we weld it on. Okay, same process as before. Line everything up really nice. Make sure the metal's nice and tight. And throw a couple tacks. And then again, your next tack is going to be here, here, here. Go all the way to the end. And then split the difference again. Go from one side to the other until you're all done. Try not to warp it. So I made a couple passes on it. You can see by looking at the light reflection on the red that there's no major warpage yet. So take a little break in between. Just don't get it too hot. Okay, we got the whole thing welded on. Now we're going to take the grinder. We're going to go over all these welds, clean this thing up, and see what she looks like. Okay, so we got the whole thing grinded down, and it came out really nice. You can see the metal is slightly recessed below the original skin, and that's okay. We're going to use a little body filler and fill that in. The main thing was not to mess up the red part here, and it seems to be pretty straight. And we also still have our original body line right here. This is what we're striving to keep. So I flipped the door back over and I sprayed a little bit more etch primer in there before we roll this thing over. All the rust protection you can get in there before you fold it over, the better off you are. So here we go. We're going to dolly that over, and then we're going to have to weld that up right there. Okay, we welded the seams together. Everything rolled over really nice here. Came out great. All we have to do now is flip the door over, put a little filler on top, and this thing's ready for some paint. Alright guys, here's the end result. These things came out pretty good. Kept that original body line like we initially planned for. That was the goal of the whole thing. The doors are all sanded down, all the chips have been taken out. These things are ready for some primer. I had to do the bottom of both doors. They were both rotted out. Now if you've never done anything like this before, especially if you've never welded or use the DA sander. Don't get discouraged if it doesn't come out looking like this. This stuff only takes like 20-30 years to figure out. Lots of trial and error, and you'll get it eventually. But hopefully I helped you guys out and showed you a couple tricks to, you know, get you started on the right track. So we're going to get some primer on these things, and keep watching the video. This truck's going to start coming together. Next we're going to do the quarter panel. That's right over here. I cut out a little bit in here just to see what was going on, but this is going to get a new inner wheelhouse and a new outer repair skin. Thanks for watching, everybody.